And here we go.
There's the deluge. Here's ignition.
Roger, roll, Atlantic. Doubling up.
Did he just do a Kerbal?
Back to the moon and beyond.
Put that in the big bag, Gino.
Back at home, we all have a lot of work to do, but from here, that sure looks like a perfect flow.
Propulsion continues to be normal.
We did have an observation.
Equalizer.
343 unfolds to go.
It's orange.
Water towers can fly!
Bingo! Right in the center.
Where's Jacqueline? There it is!
That was surreal.
That's not what we want to see.
No!
Oh my god.
Yikes, you bet. We don't need any more of these.
Hello everybody, it is time for another launch, and today, another launch indeed, because we just had some communication satellites from AST Space Mobile launching a little bit earlier this morning in the wee hours in Florida, but it's time for some more communication satellites, more internet satellites, as Amazon LEO is preparing for their third ever launch on the Ariane 6 from French Guiana. And it's a special Ariane 6 like we've never seen before, because those 4 solid rocket boosters are brand new, they're upgraded, they've got more performance, and they're slightly bigger. So those new P160C SRBs are about to ignite in flight for the first time. So that's pretty exciting. Another first for the Ariane family. Fingers crossed, coming our way in just over 55 minutes from now. My name is Ryan Caton. Thank you very much for joining us on this looking like a very beautiful morning in French Guiana. Certainly seen worse weather in this part of the world. And it's not just my voice you'll be hearing. We also have Marty joining us. How you doing, Marty?
Hello everyone, hello Ryan. I'm doing very well. The weather looks very nice out here, I should say. And yeah, we've seen Ariane 6 build up a pretty solid cadence over the past few years. And with this solid upgrade, they're getting ready to do even more and launch even more satellites. So I'm pretty excited for this one.
Indeed. And of course, if you have any questions or comments for us, feel free to tag us in chat at NASASpaceflight at NSF. Brings it into a nice queue in the background here. Keeps things nice and organised, and we'll do our best at answering any of those that come through. So, Marty, to get things started as we continue to count down, could you give us the usual little rundown on what we should expect to see for today's launch? Of course, this is LE-03, Amazon LEO's third Europe launch, as they like to say.
Yes, of course. So what we're seeing out here on the pad, specifically the pad named ELA-4, that is an abbreviation for, and pardon my French, Ensemble de Lancement Ariane 4, which means Ariane Launch Complex 4. So that's the path we're on, and the rocket which we're seeing is Ariane 6, specifically in its 64 configuration, meaning it has 4 solid rocket boosters strapped onto the first stage, which will give the main push on the way up. And these 4 solid rocket boosters, and specifically these extended P160C solid rocket boosters, allow the vehicle to carry its maximum payload mass. So strapped on top of this rocket, inside the 5-ish meter diameter fairing, are 36 Amazon LEO, formerly Kuiper, internet satellites. They will be launched into an low Earth orbit with an altitude of approximately 465 kilometers, from where they will contribute to Amazon's very own internet constellation. I was talking about the launch mass, and that is approximately 22 tons, which is right at the edge of what this vehicle can launch. This will be the 8th Ariane 6 launch, and like we said, the first one with these extended solid rocket boosters.
And we've already got a question from Chris W in chat asking how much more powerful are these new SRBs? So they're called the P160C, which is kind of an evolution of the P120C, which was the SRB that came before. But what kind of upgrade are we seeing with these new boosters on Ariane 6?
Overall, they add a 10 to 15% increase in the launcher's performance, so the entire rocket's performance. I will admit that at some point I had the specific numbers for the thrust of the boosters, but I kind of lost them. Anyway, the numbers themselves,
worries.
P120C and P160C, refer to the mass of propellant in the boosters. Originally, for the P120C, that was supposed to be around 120 metric tons. It ended up being 142. I don't know what they did wrong with their calculations there, but yeah, the P120C is heavier than its name implies. And then they did the upgrade for the P160C. They stretched the entire thing by a meter. So from 13.5 meters, they went to 14.5 meters for the 160C. And that one is much closer to its designation because the 160C has 156 metric tons of solid propellant, which, as I said, delivers a 10 to 50% increase on what Ariane 6 in its 64 configuration can carry.
And we can see that very well demonstrated in this wonderful little graphic from Amazon Leo. On the old configuration of Ariane 6, they could only launch 32 satellites, but on this newer configuration, they can launch 36 satellites. And you're like, okay, well, that's just four more satellites, Ryan. That's not a big deal. But when you consider that they're going to be launching multiple of these missions, over time, in 9 launches' time, they've basically gained an extra launch for free because they can put 4 more satellites on this thing every single launch. So over time, that will add up quite quickly and provide Amazon Leo with a much bigger constellation, which they kind of need. They've been struggling a little bit. I mean, they just the other week, they got permission from the Federal Communications Commission to not have to launch half of their satellites by their deadline in July in order to retain their communications bands, kind of the priority on those communications bands. And they are still a little ways away from their overall just over 3,000 Gen 1 target. So they've literally just crossed the 300 satellite mark. So fingers crossed, more launches to come for Amazon Leo. And more satellites or more launches means they can fill out that constellation much more quickly, which I'm sure will make everybody very happy.
Well, there will be more launches because this is not the first and definitely also not the final Amazon Leo launch contracted for Ariane. In fact, they have contracted 18 launches for to fly on Ariane 6, and two of these have already flown on the configuration with the P120Cs, so with the slightly smaller solid rocket boosters. And all the others, the 16 following from now, including this one, will all fly on the P160C.
And I believe we're seeing the first signs of life from Ariane 6. I'm seeing a little bit of wispy venting from the upper stage, the creatively named upper propulsion module.
I agree.
And it looks like we've also got a friend trying to nest next to the camera. Not sure what that was. Hopefully they stay out of the way. Let's see.
Well, they're launching from the jungle, so there might be some wildlife.
Yeah, to be expected. Natural wildlife making a cameo on the clean feeds here from Kuru. We have a question here from space enthusiast Helium and Hydrogen Blamer. They are asking, what is the height of this rocket? I think it's roughly 60 meters, if I remember correctly off the top of my head.
Yeah, I think it's about 63. And the first stage of that makes up 32 meters. The second stage, 9 meters. And then there's 20 meters of fairing, which adds up to 61 meters. So I don't know where that what's up with that 63 number that I got, but either way, if this is going to be anything like Ariane 5, which had many different fairings, they might eventually end up with a rocket that's anywhere around the 60-meter measurement.
Yeah.
Because they designed so many different fairings to accommodate very different payload configurations. And that was one of the powers of the Ariane 5 vehicle, that it was so flexible. So perhaps they will do the same for Ariane 6, or in their simplification steps, which was one of the goals for Ariane 6, they actually decided on a standard configuration. Either way, it's about 60 meters, give or take a few meters.
Of course, Ariane 5. It's weird to go back and see some of the original Ariane 5 launches, because it looks kind of stumpy with the shorter fairing compared to the
It
longer
really
fairing
does.
they ended up flying.
It really does, and especially that longer fairing ended up flying a lot, because one of the tricks Ariane 5 had is that it could launch 2 payloads to geostationary transfer orbit, which required a stretch fairing, as you might imagine, and also a special payload adapter.
Let's see. We have a question here from Paul. More of a future-looking question, but they are wondering if there's any sign of the Ariane 6 successor, Ariane Next. Of course, Arianespace or Ariane Group. I have no idea who's in charge of this. Too many Arianes. But they have this big roadmap of things that might happen in the future of rocketry. Whether they actually happen or not is yet to be seen. But have we seen anything progressing towards Ariane Next yet? Or is it still kind of a mythical something that might happen 30 years down the line?
I don't know about Ariane Next specifically. To be honest, I haven't really heard about that program in quite a while. But that doesn't mean that they aren't working on anything at all, because Arianespace is also working on a project called Themis and an engine called Prometheus. Prometheus is an attempt to build a engine specifically designed for reusability, and that engine is also going to power the Themis project. And Themis is a project from the European Space Agency and other European agencies to build a reusable booster. It's very much a demonstration booster, much like the grasshoppers from the early days of Falcon 9, which is currently hanging out in Sweden at the S-Range facility in Kiruna, where hopefully later this year it will start doing some flights. So yeah, some stuff of this is underway, and some of the learnings that they will get out of this Themis program will definitely feed into whatever vehicle is coming next, whether that's Ariane Next or another name that they may slap onto it when the vehicle is closer to launch. But specific designs or anything for Ariane Next is something that I haven't seen in quite a while.
And that is a picture of Themis in S-Range from a few months ago, and you can definitely see the resemblance to Grasshopper. So that's going to be pretty cool to see that thing fly at some point. Yeah. Reusable rocketry is something
Absolutely.
this part of the world desperately needs.
Yeah, I'm so looking forward to seeing these tests.
It is going to be fantastic. Okay, let's see here. We have a question from Gwen Ever asking, how long does it take Ariane to construct? I'm going to try that again. Put my teeth back in. How long does it take Ariane to construct each rocket? And do you know their manufacturing capacity per year? I'm not sure how long it takes them to build each individual component, but I do know once they start rolling things out at Kourou and they start assembling the rocket, it's basically a matter of weeks. Like they started rolling these solid rocket boosters out only a few weeks ago, so it's not a long lead time process.
I agree with that. Yeah, for me, the question, do you know? The answer is no and no. I don't know how long it takes them to build an entire rocket, and I also don't know their manufacturing capacity. But what I can say is that Ariane 6 is an evolution of the Ariane 5 vehicle specifically optimized for production efficiency and getting the launch costs down as far as they possibly could. So that also implies that they should be able to produce many of these things in a shorter time than it would take to produce an Ariane 5. But other than that, I don't know the specific numbers. And just looking at the manifest for the rest of this year, we've got at least 5 more launches scheduled, including 1 more Amazon LEO, also Galileo satellite, and some weather satellites. So with the 2 launches that have flown this year, they will be up to 7 then. And that is only just the beginning, because the goal for Arianespace right now is to ramp up Ariane 6's launch cadence. So hopefully they will be able to produce many more than 7 vehicles per year and actually get a lot of these rockets off the ground in future years.
I mean, I think it's really cool that they're already pretty much at a monthly launch cadence with this rocket, and this is what, like, the 7th or 8th flight. Like, this is still a pretty young launch vehicle, and yet they're already hitting monthly cadence. Like, if I told you 3 or 4 years ago that Ariane 6 is going to be out flying Vulcan, like, I wouldn't have believed you. I wouldn't have believed me.
Well,
Would
that's
you
what
believe
you
me,
get
Marty?
when you no, I wouldn't. But that's what you get when your solid rocket booster nozzles are somewhat reliable. So,
That is true.
because that's mostly the reason why Vulcan hasn't been ramping up. I bet ULA wants to fly this thing over and over, but yeah, they can't seem to get reliable performance on these solid rocket booster nozzles. So if they have to keep fixing that and keep investigating that, yeah, they will have to stand down from launches and just postpone them.
We have gotten some support. Shazbert Todbot with a $5 super. Thank you very much for your support this morning. Saying good morning from Louisiana, fellow space nerds. Let's get this rocket off the ground, shall we? Indeed, we've already gotten 1 rocket off the ground this morning from Florida with some AST Space mobile internet satellites. So might as well get another one off the ground from French Guiana with some Amazon LEO internet satellites. And I do hope that the current weather and lighting conditions hold, because this is going to be a very pretty launch indeed. I mean, the sun just rose, I'm not sure how long ago, but not that long ago in Kourou. Very early in the morning local time. I think it's just past 8 o'clock. So, or 9 o'clock. 8 o'clock. They're -3. 8 o'clock. So yeah, it is a very pretty morning indeed in the Amazon rainforest. How fitting that they are launching Amazon LEO satellites from the Amazon. I thought that was funny, but okay. Let's see.
Sorry, I was
Chalko.
muted, so but
Chalko.
it is very funny. Yeah.
Chalko is asking, will there be a noticeable increase of liftoff speed? If so, can you guys compare it to the prior booster versions? I'm not sure if we will know until it actually launches, Marty, but it has a slight increase in thrust, but at the same time it has a slight increase in mass, so I'm not sure if there'll actually be a noticeable difference.
I agree with that. Yeah, we don't know what to expect, and we'll see it whenever this thing lifts off. But like I said earlier in the stream, these stretched solid rocket boosters will allow a 10 to 15% performance increase for the entire stack, but they're also filling that up with new satellites immediately. So it might just cancel out, and it might just look like any ordinary Ariane 64 launch with just slightly taller solid rocket boosters.
And I mean, this thing in the 4SRB configuration leaps off the pad anyway, so compared to your Falcon 9s, you know, this thing is going to up, and then it's going to do a hard pitch over if it's anything like the previous flights, and that makes it's even more easier to see that hard pitch over because the SRB plume lingers in the atmosphere much longer than a liquid rocket plume. So it's very cool to see this thing yeet off the pad and then hard right fly over the Atlantic Ocean. So do expect a very rapid takeoff procedure from Ariane 6, and don't be afraid when you see that, because even though we've seen it a few times now, there's still something in the back of my head which goes, oh, is it meant to be that fast? Because I'm so used to seeing the Falcons, and they're a little bit more graceful in the way they get off the pad. They take a little bit longer.
Absolutely. These are very cool looking launches. So we're looking forward to getting quite a show in just over half an hour.
We have a question here from Space Enthusiast Helium and Hydrogen Blamer. They have another question. They are asking if they wanted to, is it possible for them to make it so they can have 6 solids on this rocket? I'm never say never. I mean, theoretically, they could physically make them fit, I would assume, because they've got space if they just rejig where those 4 SRBs are currently. But I'm not sure whether the structural loads would actually be able to support 2 more solids. But again,
I don't think there are any plans for within the current designs to upgrade to 6 solid rocket boosters. There is an upgrade set in the future, which will be a Block 3 upgrade for a new upper stage called Phoebus, I think. And that will use a much lighter weight tank construction. But so that should possibly add some performance increase. But I don't know of any concepts with 6 solid rocket boosters. But if they ever will do that, that will be a very, very powerful configuration. But I just said Block 3. And that leads to the question, then what about Block 2? Well, Block 2 is essentially the configuration that we're looking at right now. So with the stretched solid rocket boosters and also a slightly improved Vulcan engine on the first stage and a slightly improved Vinci engine on the second stage, which I'm not quite sure if they're all introduced at the same time. So they might be introduced on later flights. But it could also be that they have introduced these upgrades and we just don't know about it at this moment.
I'm sure someone's already done it in Kerbal, and if they haven't, they're about to. I mean, this thing already leaps off the pad with 4 solids, so 6. Yeah, that would go even faster. Oh dear. Notonomous is asking, why are Amazon LEO satellites launched much less frequently and more slowly than Starlink? I take difficulty with the word slowly, because technically they are launching more satellites on Ariane 6 than they do on Falcon, than SpaceX launches Starlinks on Falcon 9. Usually SpaceX launches, in the region of 25 to 29 Starlinks on a Falcon, and they've got 36 Amazon LEOs on this Ariane 6 with the new solid rocket boosters. But Marty, I'm pretty sure it's just down to the fact that SpaceX owns the rocket and the satellite in the case of Starlink. But for Amazon, they've got to procure someone else's rocket, and that means they're probably not always the number one priority.
It's probably down to multiple factors, to be honest. Like, first of all, we're also comparing a constellation that has been launching for I don't know how many years now, with a constellation that is just getting up and running. So Starlink in the early days didn't launch nearly as much as it does now. But indeed, the difference is also that SpaceX builds the Starlinks and the rockets, and Amazon, even if Blue Origin was able to launch, Blue Origin and Amazon are not the same company, so Amazon will have to buy launches from Blue Origin, just like it does from Arianespace and SpaceX and ULA. So, yeah, for LEO, they have to depend on the launch cadence from other launch providers. And that might be a bit of an issue. Like I alluded to earlier, Ariane 6 is only just ramping up its cadence. It was introduced a few years ago, and new rockets don't tend to have a weekly launch cadence like Falcon 9 does, or nearly daily sometimes. So yeah, they're now getting to a monthly launch cadence pretty much, which is very impressive. But they're also limited to these vehicles, and also the same with Falcon, ULA's new offering, which has been launching even less. At first, they didn't even fly Amazon Leo satellites on Falcon 9. And then the shareholders, I believe, got a bit angry, like, why aren't you flying on the cheapest and most prolific launch provider? Of course, there was probably some competition between Jeff Bezos' company and SpaceX going on there, which meant that Amazon didn't want to launch on Falcon 9. But then the shareholders stepped in and they did buy some launches from SpaceX. But I can also imagine that they might not want to be buying hundreds of launches from SpaceX just to get their constellation up, and in the meantime, just send money over to the competitor who will use it to improve its own constellation much more and more. One thing that we do know is that the Amazon Leo constellation is not limited by satellite production. I believe recently in a news release or some social media post, I saw it when working on Twiz This Week in Spaceflight, our weekly news show, that they said that satellite production is not the reason why they're not meeting their launch targets that were initially required by the FCC, which they recently got a waiver for.
I mean, I believe them, but a part of me also thinks, well, if you started manufacturing your satellites a few years earlier, which is technically up to you, then maybe you have more in space right now. But
Agree.
it's just my opinion. It's just my opinion. Let's see. Joel Tyler is asking, could this configuration of Ariane 6 launch Blue Moon Mark 1.5 if needed? I'm going to press X to doubt, mainly because of the performance of the vehicle. Might be able to get away with it, but it's not a really a scale of vehicle which is like when we're talking about the. So for those of you who don't know, this is kind of Blue's interim kind of demonstrator thing that they're going to be flying for Artemis 3. Originally going to be launching on New Glenn. As you will know, New Glenn is having some problems. There's talk of perhaps moving it to Falcon Heavy. Falcon Heavy is a little bit more powerful than Ariane 6. So I think Ariane 6, also considering the fact that it's a foreign launch vehicle to Blue Origin, I would imagine there's probably a much higher likelihood it launches on a SpaceX vehicle than an Ariane vehicle. We have another question here from Gabriel GG, and they're asking, will Arianespace convert Ariane 6 to a reusable launcher in future? I think they have some reusable booster ambitions. I don't know if it's like an actual plan or if it's just something that they might want to do in the future, maybe. I don't know if you have any more insight, Marty.
As far as I know, not for Ariane 6. Any reusability will debut on the next vehicle beyond Ariane 6, which is currently called Ariane Next.
Very creative.
And very, very creative, yeah. But they are already working on that. Earlier in the stream, we talked about the Themis program and the Prometheus engine, which are programs executed by Arianespace, funded by the European Space Agency and some of the more local space agencies in Europe, which are solely focused on developing reusable boosters and reusable engines. So reusability is in the pipeline for Europe, but not for this vehicle as far as I know.
They Ariane, not Arianespace, but if you go one layer above, you have Ariane Group, which is the group that owns Arianespace. Very simple, I know. But they also own another company called NASASpace, and they are basically working on kind of like a European Falcon 9. So it's not Arianespace themselves, but their kind of sister company. They are working on reusable rocketry.
They are, yeah. And the goal for Arianespace is actually to get a European reusable launcher off the ground as soon as possible. So hopefully they can make it work. And that will be much sooner than whatever reusable variant the Ariane rocket family is going to introduce.
I can't remember exactly when. It was a few months ago, but we did talk to Arianespace on Europe's Future in Space, which is our NSF Live series. I'm sure the mods will be linking that in chat for us if they can find it, because it was a little while ago. Can't remember if it was last year or the year before. I think it was last year. I can't remember.
I think so, but it was a very cool interview. I remember watching that and getting very excited for the company. So definitely recommend
more rockets, more better.
If you're interested in this. Absolutely.
Okay, 27 minutes to go exactly. There we go. Nice timing. Continuing to count down towards the launch of Amazon LEO LE-03. Marty, for those people who may have joined us in the last few minutes, could you give us another quick rundown on what we are expecting to see fly today? What is Amazon LEO? What's inside the payload fairing? Where are we going?
For sure. Well, to answer that question first, what's inside the payload fairing? What is Amazon LEO? Amazon LEO is Amazon's internet constellation, kind of the company's answer to Starlink, as we all know from SpaceX. And you may know it by its former name, Kuiper, Project Kuiper, which is a Dutch name. So I'm very fond of that name, but apparently Amazon was not, and they got rid of it. Anyway, they've been building out the constellation. And this is just another launch to get more satellites up in space. And what we can see here is a comparison between the previous Ariane 6 launches for LEO and this one. So you can see that this very rocket has 4 more satellites encapsulated in its fairing than the previous launches. And that is enabled by the slight stretch in the solid rocket boosters that are strapped onto this Ariane 6 vehicle. This is Ariane 64, so that is the 4 solid rocket booster configuration of Ariane 6. Previously, it used to fly the P120C solid rocket boosters, which are the boosters you see attached there on the bottom. And fun fact, they are derived from the same boosters that were designed for the Vega-C, or the Vega launch vehicle. And Vega-C and Ariane 6 are designed to use the very same boosters. But now, for this specific launch and many launches in the future, they've introduced the P160C upgrade. So from 120, we go to 160C, which is a 1 meter stretch, which allows them to fit more propellant into this booster and thus squeeze out more performance. The entire stack will see a 10 to 15% performance increase compared to the previous configuration. Ultimately, Vega-C will also fly with these stretch boosters, but I believe that will be introduced on a future launch. So yeah, this rocket is sitting out there on the pad, waiting for its launch. We already saw some vapors coming off the rocket earlier. I'm not seeing anything now, but it's certainly getting ready for launch in just about 24 minutes. Then what we'll see right then is that the Vulcan 2.1 engine on the core stage, the hydrogen-powered core stage, will ignite 7 seconds before liftoff. And then once the solid rocket boosters ignite, the vehicle has no choice but go and fly. So that's what we're about to see.
I was actually wondering about Vega. I didn't know they were also going to be eventually introducing the P160. I mean, it makes sense, but introducing the P160C on Vega as well. I mean, Vega is a bit more of a... I wouldn't call Vega a small sat launch vehicle, but it's definitely a smaller launch vehicle. So it's cool to see that's getting an upgrade as well.
It's medium. So... but yeah,
I'm too indoctrinated by
promise...
Starship Super Heavy, and it makes it look really small.
Yeah, I don't want to promise when it's going to fly, But the upgrade is called Vega C+, which will feature the P160Cs. Okay, just having a quick look at Wikipedia, which says Vega C+ is not expected before 2028. So that will be a few more years until we see that. At least if you can trust Wikipedia. We all learned in school that that might not be the best source. But yeah, it seems like it is still a few years out, but Vega will definitely get that upgrade. And it will also support Europe's reusable Space Rider vehicle. So that will be quite interesting to see.
I completely forgot about Space Rider. That's really interesting. Do we have any update? I know we had it on This Week in Spaceflight a few weeks ago. Are there any updates on Space Rider, or are they still working through their kind of outfitting?
I think they're outfitting the first test model, which will be flying drop tests above one of the Italian islands, which I forgot the name of. But yeah, it's being outfitted and getting ready for testing. So it's coming along nicely, I think. And the Italian island, which I forgot the name of, is Sardinia.
I mean, there's Sardinia and there's Sicily, and there's the two big ones. So you got a 50-50 shot of getting it right, pretty much.
They're big, and they both start with an S, so it's very confusing.
Let's see here. We have a question from ResistoJet, and they are asking, what is the maximum payload for the Ariane versus Falcon or any other comparable rocket?
Okay. Well, this P160C booster upgrade will raise the payload capacity for Ariane 6 to approximately 22 metric tons. That is the official number from Arianespace, approximately 22 metric tons. Then we've got to compare it to other vehicles like Falcon 9. If you go to SpaceX website, you see Falcon 9's payload to LEO capacity is 22.8 metric tons, which is slightly more, but that will also be in Falcon's expendable configuration. So that is a configuration that SpaceX doesn't want to fly if they can help it at all. Another rocket that's interesting to look at is Falcon from ULA. That one is slightly more powerful. So just going to the official specs, they actually list many different numbers because just going to LEO, there are many ways to go to LEO. You could go to a polar orbit, to the ISS, or just to a reference orbit that ULA is listing on their website. So I'll just take those numbers, which are also the most positive numbers. The others are slightly lower. But with 4 solid rocket boosters, Falcon will be able to lift 24.6 metric tons. And if you up the solid rocket booster count to 6, then it will be able to lift just over 27 metric tons. So slightly more powerful than the numbers listed for Falcon 9 and Ariane 6, but it also depends on the orbit you're looking for.
It's cool to see that they're continuing to upgrade, kind of add or enter that kind of Falcon 9 class market, if you get what I'm trying to say. Because, you know, if you didn't know, Falcon 9 is kind of a popular launch vehicle. So by aligning on the by aligning on that same sort of mass to LEO kind of benchmark, I mean, I'm sure it will make commonality much easier, make Ariane 6 a more enticing launch vehicle, because hey, if you've designed your thing to fly on Falcon 9, it'll probably be able to fly on Ariane 6.
For sure. Yeah.
Again, if you have any questions or comments for us, make sure to tag us in chat at NASASpaceflight or at NSF, and it brings it into a nice queue here in the background, and we can do our best at answering all of your questions, as we have been doing for the last 40 minutes or so. We're currently 18 minutes 20 seconds away from launch, counting down towards the 3rd Amazon LEO flight on board an Ariane 6 rocket. Of course, the first with those brand new P160C solid rocket boosters. Paul Kelly is asking, what are the consequences for Amazon if they don't get the full Constellation launched by the FCC deadline? That's a really great question, because it's kind of they don't have like launch restrictions. This is the thing to understand. They don't have launch restrictions, but they do have communications priority restrictions, which basically, because of the way they work, create launch restrictions. So it's a bit complicated, but Marty, I'm pretty sure they'll just lose priority on the frequencies they want to use should they not launch all of the satellites in time.
Exactly. So recently the FCC waived some of their requirements. At first, Amazon was to have half of the Constellation launched by July, I think. Is that correct, Ryan? Well,
I can't remember the exact day, but it is July the month.
Yeah. But yeah, they're nowhere near that. They've launched several hundreds of satellites, but that's about it. Fun fact, this launch, Ariane 6 launch, will have the 100th Kuiper LEO satellite for the LEO launch contract on Ariane 6. So that means that it will definitely be more than 100 in total. Anyway, the requirement to launch at least half of these of the Constellation was waived earlier this month. For that, they had to launch about 1,600 satellites, if I'm not mistaken. But they're not going to make that in time. But they will still have to launch the entirety of the Constellation by a later date. And that requirement is still very, very strict. So if they don't make that, then the next satellites that are going up won't get their frequency rights, or they won't be guaranteed the frequency rights that they have reserved for the Constellation right now. So that's definitely something that Amazon wants to be aware of, because you don't want to launch your satellites and then have to turn off some antennas or disable some of the frequencies you were planning to use. That will only limit the Constellation in what it can do and how much bandwidth it will have. So, yeah, they do actually really, really want to get all these satellites up in time, or they will have to beg for another waiver. But let's hope that's not necessary.
Yeah, I really do hope that they can get some more satellites in space and get to the deadline with the correct number of satellites in space. Because, of course, you know, some people may say, and they can rightly say, well, why do we need Amazon LEO? Why do we need all these different internet satellite companies? We already have Starlink. They've got over 10,000 satellites in orbit already. Why do we need all these other people? Well, in this society, if you want your prices to remain competitive, you need a competitor. So if you don't want your prices on your Starlink internet getting hiked, then we need your Amazon LEOs and your other internet satellite companies to try and compete on price to make sure that, you know, SpaceX doesn't hike up their prices. Because I'm not saying they will. I think there's a very, very low likelihood they will. But technically tomorrow they could 10x all of the Starlink subscription prices, and there's nothing anyone could do because, well, there's no one else to turn to that's able to provide that similar level of service. So fingers crossed, by having actual competitors like Amazon LEO, they'll be able to compete on price and also keep Starlink at bay from rising prices to ridiculous levels.
Indeed.
We have a question here from Arlioski. Sorry if I pronounced that wrong, but they are asking, why is it named Amazon LEO LE-03? Well, unfortunately, even though I would have loved them to call it LA-03 for LEO Ariane 03, that was already taken because they'd already launched on Atlas, which is A. So the L stands for LEO, the E stands for Europe, I know, and then 03 is just Mission 3. So maybe they should have called it LAR. LE just is a bit silly, but you do you at Amazon.
once they get another European rocket. But
Yes.
yeah.
I'm going to run out of letters of the alphabet.
LS for Spectrum or something like that.
Yes.
If that one ever launches.
Yeah, I'm not even sure if they'll be able to fit one of these Amazon Leo satellites on Spectrum, to be honest.
Maybe not.
Much
Spectrum
smaller
is
vehicle.
quite smaller than.
What about Irene? That would work.
Ooh.
We're from the exploration company LY-0. You know.
Yeah, that would definitely work. Although that launch vehicle is still a long ways away. It hasn't even been formally announced yet.
No. I'm going
I
to
believe
say
by the time that vehicle is around, Amazon is supposed to have launched all their satellites. Then again, they might keep launching some spares or replacing some satellites. But
what's going to launch first? The actual launch of Spectrum or the announcement launch of Irene?
I'm hoping for everyone involved with the Spectrum launch that it will be Spectrum. But by this point, I wouldn't be surprised if we see many, many things launch before this rocket.
Oh dear. We have another question, or October Sky is asking, are these your camera assets? They are not ours, but they are from Arianespace, and we are very grateful to them because they have provided us clean access to their cameras. So they're not NSF cameras, they are Ariane cameras, but they've given us special access to bring these to you, kind of low latency, clean feeds. So very, very grateful to Arianespace for making this feed happen. Means we can bring it all to you, just like our other streams where we do have our own cameras.
But just saying, if Arianespace wants us over there with a camera, then they should just send us an email or something.
I mean,
we'll
we're not going to say no
there.
to a little camera plot. You know, if we could just like duplicate our Starbase highway site with some robots, solar panel, and some internet, I mean, we're not going to say no. Give us a call,
please.
Ariane. Night Ranger 38 is asking, does Ariane 6 have something equivalent to the T-20 minute vent of Falcon 9? Well, we passed the minus 20 minute mark about 10 minutes ago, and there wasn't a big vent, so not in that sense, but I'm sure they will have procedures similar to what the T-20 minute vent is meant to do. I mean, in the case of Falcon 9, that vent is of course meant to clear out all of the lines before they start loading liquid oxygen on the upper stage. So I'm sure they'll have similar purging procedures at this specific launch pad, just not in the sense of a massive vent 20 minutes before launch. I'm sure their fueling procedures are also very different to Falcon, considering this is a Hydrolox launch vehicle, not a Carolox launch vehicle.
We don't have as detailed information on the Ariane 6 launch countdown sequence as we have on Falcon 9 and some of the other rockets. So yeah, there might be some procedures that will occur on a very fixed time, like the T-20 minute vent. But none that we've been able to see so far, as you just said, Ryan. But even then, it helps to have a very detailed overview of the countdown for us to know what to look for, and we currently don't have that.
Let's see here. Resistojet is asking, if it hasn't been asked already, what's the new booster upgrade? Well, we did cover this earlier on in the stream, but as we get closer to launch, there are of course going to be many more people joining us now than there were 50 minutes ago. So Marty, if you wouldn't mind, could you give us another little rundown on what is brand new with the P160C solid rocket boosters compared to the previous generation of Ariane 6?
Of course. Well, if you look at the bottom of the rocket, there are 4 solid rocket boosters strapped on. You can currently see only 2 from this perspective. Previously, they used to be the P120C solid rocket boosters, built by Avio, Italian company, which also builds the Vega C launch vehicle. And that's a lot of C's. So what does the C in P120C stand for? It stands for common, and that's because it's being used by both Ariane and Vega. For Vega, it's just the first stage. For Ariane, it's the strap-on boosters that they use to give it a slight boost when it comes off the pad. Now, they have upgraded this booster by stretching it by about a meter. And that leads to the P160C, which we see on our screens right now. So the P120C is 13.5 meters tall, P160C is 14.5 meters. And that gives space for a lot more propellant, which allows for a 10 to 15% increase, performance increase on the entire stack. Now for the numbers. So P160C means that it has about 160 metric tons, or more specifically 156 metric tons of solid propellant loaded into it. So that would suggest that P120C has 120 more or less. But no, they decided on the name before they finished the development process, and eventually they ended up being able to stick 142 metric tons of solid propellant into the tubes. So yeah, I guess it should be called P140C, but that's not the label they're sticking onto that. So yeah, either way, whether the names are correct or not, these new boosters will have quite a solid, pun intended, performance increase over the previous ones, which allows Amazon to stick 4 more LEO satellites on top of this rocket. They go from 32 to 36, which will only help them to build out the constellation much quicker than they previously could.
I'm looking at some pictures here from pre-launch, which is why it's dark, whereas in reality it's currently daytime. Pretty cool to see those newer boosters stretched by meter on Ariane 6. Okay, we are approaching the L-6 minute mark now. If I remember correctly, I think we should be getting callouts from Mission Control shortly. So if we do hear anything, I will of course stop talking so we can listen into Mission Control, even though they will be talking in French and nobody will be able to understand them. But I mean, Marty, your French pronunciation was earlier, so I'll rely on you, even though...
Well, I've had 3 years of French in high school, but that's not enough to do anything more than introduce my name and order a croissant or something. So I'm not sure I'll be able to do any translation on the call out, but I know the word for liftoff, décollage. So
Yep.
I guess we can translate that call out, but I hope we get beautiful views for that, and we won't need any translation for that.
I'm sure we'll be able to tell from their tone of voice and expression on their faces whether what they are saying is go for launch or no go for launch. But fingers crossed we hear from Mission Control momentarily. Of course, they have their Jupiter control room at the Guiana Space Center in French Guiana, which is where all of these Ariane 6 missions are controlled from. Of course, a very weather-prone part of the world, hence the 4 massive lightning towers you can see on each side of this shot. But we are standing by to see if we hear anything. I don't want to talk over them accidentally, so you may notice we always go in this awkward holding pattern, waiting to see if we hear anything. But let's stand by.
À tous de DDO, attention pour la séquence finale lanceur.
I think that means good,
Top
right?
à 0 moins 5 minutes.
That sounded like I said, I don't really know French, but to me that sounded like they just announced the final countdown.
Nice. Okay, so 3 minutes, 50 seconds, and counting towards the launch of Amazon LEO LE-03, the first launch of the Ariane 6 with its 4 new P160C SRBs. So as we continue to count down, not much visually is going to happen, unlike, say, with a Falcon 9. You know, with Falcon, usually we see that strong back retract, and of course, a little ways initially from Slick 40, a little bit further from Slick 4E. On Ariane 6, we just see it just kind of sits there. Oh, fuel
And South
cam.
is
Fuel
saying
can
that they
cam.
just said, ooh, nice. Yeah, they're testing the thrust vector control on the engine just a few minutes ahead of launch. So what we just saw was the engine bell, the nozzle, and it was wiggling around a bit. So that seems to be working. Always
We
a
will see
great shot.
We will see those big yellow arms open up come launch, though. So that's kind of I'd say a similarity to the strongback, but it's not actually retracting before launch. They retract quite quickly at the time of launch itself. Of course, when they light up those four solids, it's going to go very quickly. And if you saw the clock skip back a few seconds, don't panic. We are just getting a more detailed time for launch, which is 52 seconds past the minute. So there isn't actually a launch delay. It's just before we didn't actually know how many seconds past the minute the launch was going to be. So we just set it to 00 seconds. But now we know it's 52 seconds past the minute. And there is Ariane 6 standing on, I'm going to call it Ariane Launch Complex 4 because I daren't try and do the French pronunciation out of fear of offending an entire nation. It's ELA-4, which means Ariane Launch Complex 4 in French. Approaching 2 minutes left to go in the countdown now. I think the next announcement we will get from the mission control room in Kourou will be around 1 minute before launch. So we will stand by to see if we hear from them momentarily. But for now, we are continuing to count down, still seeing the normal venting we expect from Ariane 6. Got a few clouds overhead, but mostly blue skies. And some wonderful morning lighting in this part of the world in South America.
This is going to be a beautiful launch.
Indeed, especially with the SRB trail as it climbs uphill. 90 seconds until launch. That is everyone rushing outside, out of the viewing gallery at the Jupiter control room in Kourou. Unsurprisingly. I'm surprised they've waited this late, to be honest. I would have been out there, an hour ago. Okay, let's stand by for the final word from mission control.
À tous de DDO, attention pour moins une minute. À tous de DDO. Arrêt du temps des comptes suite à un rouge. Ensemble de lancement. Que tous les moyens restent prêts pour la reprise de la chronologie. À Giro, moins 5 minutes.
I'm going to assume that meant 1 minute.
I think so. I did hear the word rouge, which is red. So, not sure what that means.
And they're not showing the board, so I'm going to...
No.
My gut feeling is that if something was bad, they'd show the board showing it being bad. So let's wait and see. 20 seconds until T0.
Ooh,
What's
there is
that
something
red
on
thing?
there.
Oh,
no.
brilliant. It's right in the way of the clock. Is that auto start?
Authorization? Okay, I'm seeing hold confirmed in the back channel.
I'll put the
which
clock.
makes
I
sense.
took the clock away because I wanted to read what was on the
Yeah.
screen, not because I didn't want the clock on the screen. The clock was in the way of the text, and I wanted to read the text.
And it's important to say that it might be a hold, but they still have some time to launch because the launch window actually lasts until 22 minutes past the hour. So they've got just under half an hour left to go for an attempt. Even if they won't launch at the opening of the window, there's still time in the launch window to get this thing off the ground. But we'll have to see what what this red alert on the board means and how they can resolve that, and if they can resolve that within the launch window.
Of course, this isn't like Falcon where they load and go. This is a bit more of a older kind of mentality of being able to load long before launch and hold with liquid hydrogen and liquid oxygen, like Vulcan and Atlas and SLS, and that kind of era of rocketry. So, of course, there's plenty of hold time. Or Ariane 6 is able to hold for plenty of time, I should say. Put the words in the right order. The clock has recycled to 5 minutes before launch. It's not counting, it's just recycled to -5 minutes. So I assume that is where they will pick up the count when they have selected a new liftoff time. But for any given moment, launch is a minimum of 5 minutes away.
It is. And I do want to say, like you were comparing it to Falcon 9, like just the fact that Falcon 9 does this load and go thing doesn't mean that's necessarily more modern. It's just a limitation that Falcon 9 uses this super chilled propellant, which can't really warm up inside the vehicle, because then they won't be able to fit as much propellant into the rocket, which affects the performance. And Ariane 6 isn't doing that, so they can actually, they still use cryogenic propellants, but not super chilled, which means that the loading procedures are much less strict, and they can also keep the rocket top for a longer period of time, which allows them to shift into a launch window like this. It allows them much more wiggle room. So it's mostly just a procedural difference between Falcon 9 and Ariane 6, not necessarily a measure of how modern the rocket design is.
Still standing by for some more information. If you are just joining us, expecting a beautiful launch of 4 new SRBs, we are holding the count in the final few moments for, I think it was launch authorization or something along those lines. So I'm not sure whether that's just a final call that needs to be made, or if there's something on the vehicle which is saying, hang on a minute, let's take a look at this. But everything else on the board seemed to be green.
Or perhaps something from the range or the pad, if it wasn't a rocket.
Chat is saying that it's something to do with the launch complex itself, so I'm going to trust chat on that one. That does make sense. Hopefully something that they can resolve with the launch pad rather quickly and remotely.
That would be nice. The Space Center in Kourou is ginormous, so I'm not sure if they can send someone out and back to fix it in time. So,
yeah, I wouldn't exactly want to send out the red team when they just, held off a few seconds before launch. So
no, and it's not like Starbase, where the launch pad is just a few kilometers down the road. Like if you put a marker between the Jupiter Control Center and the launch pad, it's like 15 kilometers or 16 kilometers away, which is a whole other beast.
vehicle, of course, venting as normal. Something we always expect to see. So basically 9 times, I was going to say 9 times out of 10, but 99.9 times out of 100. If you see a rocket venting, it's meant to be venting. It's not smoke or anything. It's just normal rocket doing its thing, venting away excess propellant. And preventing gas buildup, because you don't want your boil off to have gas buildup. If your rocket has gas buildup, call your doctor.
Yeah, no, that's not great. Usually that leads to overpressure in the tanks, and you don't really want that.
But Marty, as you were saying, we do have a launch window to play with. Closes 22 minutes past the hour. And we are approaching the hour in 10 seconds from now. So considering that it looks like they have the recycle point from 5 minutes before launch, which makes sense because that's when the launch director does their call out, their first call out. They do one at 5 minutes and one at 1 minute. I'd say we probably have 15 minutes left in today's window, considering, you know, even if they were to go right now, it would still be 5 minutes from now. So always add on 5 minutes to the current time is kind of the calculation you have to do in your head.
If they don't resume the count by 17 minutes past, then we're not going to see it today. But that still means that they have 17 minutes from now to start counting down again.
Indeed. In the meantime, everybody, if you do have any more questions or comments for us, do tag us in chat at NASASpaceflight at NSF. While we have the opportunity, I'm going to go through some more of these. Resistor Jet is asking, do you think that Ariane, I'm going to say Arianespace or Ariane Group, because Ariane Group owns everyone. Do you think that Ariane Group will achieve partial reusability before 2030? I mean, this is basically, do you think that NASASpace will be launching their vehicle before 2030? Considering that's 4 years away, I would hope so.
I'd hope so too. Their goal is to get a European reusable launcher from the ground as soon as possible. That is NASASpace's goal. And to that end, they're using technology that was already developed, like the Prometheus engine that Arianespace has been working on. So I'd say they've got a good shot at it. On the other hand, we haven't really heard anything. We haven't really got any updates from NASASpace in a while. But yeah, if they're still on track, then I do think that they will debut their launch vehicle before the end of the decade.
We have a question here from Mika or Micah Original. Sorry if I pronounced that incorrectly. But they are saying it's a European rocket from ESA, well, technically from Arianespace, but you know, ESA does help. Why does it not launch in Europe? Does anything launch from Europe since it's so far away from the equator? Well, I would say that Spectrum launches from Europe, but so far it doesn't launch from Europe. It's an interesting point, but on the other hand, this is French Guiana. It's French territory. So it's still Europe, right?
In some ways, like what counts as Europe is very, very complicated because some countries like France are still holding on to some of the territories from their colonial days. And yeah, so in a way, this might be counted as Europe, but definitely not continental Europe. Okay, I'm hearing a very unpleasant sound now. I hope that's on the stream.
Thanks. Thanks, Arianespace, for that one.
Anyway, it is very advantageous to launch from close by the equator because if you need to go into a low inclination orbit, then you get a bit of a push from the rotation of the Earth. So that is why one of the reasons why they're going to launch from South America, actually. Another reason is that launch pads require a lot of empty space around them. You don't want to launch over cities and villages or any populated areas, really. And you also need a bit of an exclusion zone because sometimes, unfortunately, things go wrong. We've recently seen that with New Glenn. So Europe is very, very densely populated. And also, if you just go look at the geography of Europe, it doesn't have the advantage of having a big ocean to the east, like the US does. So you can't really launch from a European east coast and not overfly populated areas for thousands of kilometers. So yeah, the best bet is really launching from an equatorial launch site, and France has one. So yeah, might as well use it. But there are indeed some orbits that can be reached from Europe, like polar orbits, which ESA's Spectrum rocket is targeting, which can be reached from Norway. Or RFA is going to fly from the Shetland Islands, which is also very suitable for polar orbits. So yeah, there are some launches you can do, but especially if you need to go to lower inclinations, then that might be a bit challenging. So that's a good reason to use this launch site, even if it's not really in Europe at all, or not in continental Europe at least.
And it might seem, quite a ways out there, but they have built a good production line and a good process to get the vehicles to Kourou. They've been doing it for a few decades at this point. They've been doing it since the 60s and the 70s, when the Ariane family and even its predecessor, the Europa rocket, were doing its thing out of Kourou. So it's been there for a little while, and they have been launching out of Kourou for a little while. So it might seem not the ideal holiday destination, but it's easy to reach in terms of rocket supply chain.
It is. And the Guiana Space Center is located right next to the city of Kourou, which also has a port. So it's very easy to get your rocket parts and your payloads to, with especially with Europe's ships that they use to ship these payloads across the Atlantic.
I'm going to do a big thank you to Bideford, because Bideford is always in chat, and Bideford has just done a $25 super chat. So thank you very much, Bideford. That is greatly appreciated, as you will know. We are very grateful for your support, especially because you're always in chat. But everybody's support, everybody watching now, thank you very much for tuning in, because we're literally watching a rocket not do anything right now. But do keep watching, because fingers crossed it will do something within the next few minutes. But thank you, Bideford, for your support. It is very much appreciated, and yes, liking does help as well. Paul Kelly is asking, is there a penalty for launching to higher inclinations like this one from so close to the equator? We often talk about the fact that if you launch close to the equator to the east, you get that little boost from the Earth's rotation. Is there like an opposite effect for launching to polar orbits? I would imagine it wouldn't be huge, but you are spinning less the higher you are or lower you are on Earth, I assume.
For a long time, I thought that there was a penalty. But then recently I was talking to someone at ESA, and that person said, no, there's no penalty at all. So, yeah, I'm going to trust the expert on there and say that there should be no penalty. But I might be wrong, or my expert might be wrong. So if someone understands orbital mechanics a bit better than me, please chime in chat.
I was going to say something, and now I've completely forgotten what I was going to say. Very useful. Well done, Ryan.
I'm seeing Das in the back channel now saying polar orbits are more efficient from higher latitudes and worse from the equator. That's what I thought. So I was quite surprised when the person at ESA said that there shouldn't be a penalty. So
I remember what I was going to say now.
Let's say that much.
I was going to say, and when we say penalty, we don't mean like a financial penalty or a 10-second penalty. We mean payload penalty. Like, for example, if you were to launch to the west from the equator, you would be able to launch less mass, less stuff physically into orbit than you were if you were to launch to the east, because of course the Earth spins in the direction towards the east because the Earth is round, fun fact. So because the Earth spins in that direction, when you launch in the direction of the Earth's rotation, you get a nice little free boost from Earth. Kind of, the Earth kind of kicks the rocket up a little bit. Whereas if you're going to launch in the other direction, in a retrograde orbit, it's called, in the opposite orbit, you have to fight against the Earth's rotation, which is why we call that a payload penalty, because with the same rocket, you can launch less stuff because you have to spend more propellant fighting against Earth compared to launching with Earth. Hopefully that makes sense.
Yeah, it's just not just fighting, it's like cancelling out the rotation that's imparted on the rocket and the payload by being on a spinning orb. So if you want to go to these higher inclinations, you first have to cancel that out, and then you can actually spend your propellant to go into orbit while you do it at the same time. But canceling it out and then spending propellant to go into your orbit is kind of a neat way to think about it, I think.
Exactly. Okay, we are now 10 minutes past the hour for those of you just joining us, and as a reminder, today's launch window goes until 22 minutes past the hour, so fingers crossed we get a new launch time within the next 7 minutes, because if not, we will be running a little short on time, because the countdown recycled back to L-5 minutes. So when they pick up the count, they will have to start the countdown 5 minutes before launch. So 22 minus 5, 17. So that is the last moment they can restart the countdown today. According to the kind of status panel in the Jupiter control room in Kourou, French Guiana, there was a red bar under the launch pad criteria. So it looks like something at the launch complex itself was holding the launch as compared to a vehicle issue or a weather issue or a range issue or something like that. So we are standing by to see what Arianespace decides to do, and for now we are still waiting for a new launch time, and fingers crossed we do hear that within the next few minutes, because I would like to see this rocket launch today. I'm sure you would all like to see this rocket launch as well, and it's very tense as always waiting for a new launch time, because we physically don't know when it will come. But in some other good news, I can report that CRS-34, SpaceX's latest Cargo Dragon mission to the International Space Station, which we live streamed the undocking of yesterday, has just splashed down in the Pacific Ocean off the coast of California. So good news, CRS-34 is back on Earth. Ariane 6 is also on Earth, and fingers crossed it won't be in 10 minutes' time.
I want it to be a space rocket, not an Earth rocket.
Indeed. Skies still look good, so that's probably that's a nice thing. Still some clouds, but more blue than white, which is what you want to see. So looks like we've and even for that matter, they don't look to be the thick, angry clouds that prevent launches. They look to be the nice, light, puffy clouds, which just provide some nice foreground and background elements to the tracking shots. So fingers crossed we hear something from Arianespace very soon, but I'm getting even more aware that we are now just 5 minutes away from that 17 minutes past the hour mark. So we will be patient, but I'm getting a little bit more nervous.
Yeah. 10 more minutes remaining. So they've reset the clock to T minus 5 minutes. So as soon as they start counting again, we've got 5 minutes until launch. So that means that indeed that we want them to start counting again by 17 minutes.
Le nouvel âge gyrovisé sera 12h, 21 minutes, 52 secondes. Le TD redémarrera à 12h, 16 minutes et 52 secondes.
Okay, we have gotten an update. We have a new T0 of 21 minutes and 52 seconds past the hour. Good news.
That's just within the window.
I mean, that's like 8 seconds before the window before the window closes. So
that's enough window to make it happen.
Indeed. But the clock is running, everybody. Finally, the clock is running. They took their sweet time, and they're just gonna squeeze it out. Fingers crossed. Just gonna squeeze this launch out of this window.
I hope so. Ryan, you were talking about the clouds earlier. We're pretty sure that the weather wasn't to blame for the hold. I think we believe that it might have been something on the launch pad that they wanted to check out.
Yeah, I don't believe, or at least I didn't have Google Translate running in time, but I don't believe that announcement contained what the issue was. If it was, I didn't hear it. or at least I didn't translate it, but we did get the new launch time, which is 12:21:52 UTC, which is in 7 minutes and 3 seconds. And they also said after that they will restart the countdown at 12:16:52 Coordinated Universal Time, which is, of course, 5 minutes before that launch time. So that makes sense. And yep, quite literally, they're going to launch with 8 seconds remaining in the launch window, which, squeaky bum time, but fingers crossed they can get it off the ground just in time. And Marty, while we have about 90 seconds or so until we get that 5-minute call out, would you mind giving us another quick rundown on what we're going to see today? Because, of course, some more people will have joined us in the last few minutes of the countdown.
Sure. So we're looking at an Ariane 6 rocket in specifically the Ariane 64 configuration. This is Europe's most powerful rocket, and it's made even more powerful because it's the very first one with the B160C solid rocket motors. So these are the strap-on solid rocket boosters you see at the end of the rocket. They will provide a 10 to 15% performance increase for the entire rocket stack compared to the previous solid rocket boosters that were flying on Ariane 6, the P120C. Now, what are we going to use this performance increase for? We're going to use it to loft more LEO satellites for Amazon, for Amazon's LEO Internet constellation, formerly known as Kuiper. With the previous configuration, they were able to stick 32 of these satellites inside Ariane 6's fairing, but now they add 4 more, so 36 payloads. And Ariane 6 will deliver them into a approximately 465 kilometer orbit.
Attention pour la reprise du temps des comptes.
And I think that was the countdown
Top,
starting
début
again.
de la séquence finale lanceur.
And there we go.
There we go.
Nouvelle âge gyrovisé, 12h21 52 secondes.
Maybe they were just repeating the launch time. Anyways, please do continue.
Yeah. So Ariane 6 is going to loft these satellites into a approximately 465 kilometer orbit. From there, the satellites will do some initial health checks, and then they will raise their own orbits a bit more. So they go into the right place to serve customers on the ground with internet.
4 minutes to go. Yep, there's it's very similar to all of the other launches, apart from the fact that they've got the new solid rocket boosters on. So we've been talking about that quite a lot over the course of the last hour and a bit as we've been waiting for this launch. And if you are just joining us once again because you saw the hold and you thought, well, I'm going to go, I don't know, get a snack or something and then come back, we are counting down once again. They have set a new launch time for well, it's a very tight launch time, 21 minutes and 52 minutes past the hour, a whopping 8 seconds before their launch window closes. But it's still before the launch window closes, so plenty of margin, a whole 8 seconds. And that is a live view at the Vulcan on the aft end of the lower liquid propulsion module, also known as the core stage of Ariane 6, standing at Launch Complex 4 in Kourou, French Guiana.
Just a few minutes before launch, they will perform a thrust vector control test of that engine. And for the previous T0, we actually saw them do that. I didn't notice them moving around the engine just yet, but they either did that off screen or we'll get to see that in a few minutes.
Indeed. 2 minutes, 40 seconds remaining in the countdown now. And we should once again hear from Mission Control, approximately 1 minute before launch. So fingers crossed their words are much more positive than what they said at the last T-1 minute gate. And And fingers crossed we can get a launch off the ground in just over 2 minutes' time. But we have some wonderful blue skies directly above the rocket. Some clouds in the distance, but we want them to be in the distance. Directly above the rocket looks to be clear skies. And we've got a wonderful morning lighting from the sun shining down on Ariane 6 in its 4 SRB configuration. And the huge flame trench as well, where there will be plenty of SRB exhaust, I'm sure, coming out of there in just under 2 minutes' time. Looks like the crowd has gathered on the shores of French Guiana as well to watch this this launch take place in 1 minute and 40 seconds from now. Approximately 90 seconds until launch. We're standing by for the final call from that room. And once again, the mass exodus from the viewing gallery at the Jupiter control room as everybody heads outside to watch Amazon Leo LE-03 launch from Launch Complex 4. We should be hearing from... Is he about to talk?
À tous de DDO, attention pour moins une minute. Top, A0 moins une minute.
That
Sounds like
much better.
Yep. I didn't hear rouge. I didn't hear any other French colours. And it sounds like we are going to be launching in 45 seconds from now. Let's keep watching at the launch pad, because the first thing we will see is, of course, that engine, the Vulcan 2.1, lighting up. And then we will see the 4 solid rocket boosters. And then, of course, launch. I mean, once those SRBs are lit, you're launching whether you like it or not. So let's stand by. 25 seconds left to go.
The engine will start lighting at T-7 or L-7 seconds.
À tous de DDO, attention pour le décompte final. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Allumage ESR et décollage. La propulsion est nominale. La propulsion est nominale. Pilotage calme. Trajectoire nominale. La propulsion est nominale. Passage du transonique. Trajectoire nominale.
We're 60 seconds into flight, and that was a rumble in the jungle like we've never heard before, as Ariane 6 with 4 brand new, upgraded solid rocket boosters lifts off from Launch Complex 4 in French Guiana.
La trajectoire est nominale.
And what a liftoff.
Still tracking from the beach as everybody... Put the phones down, everybody. As everybody watches on. Beautiful views on board Ariane 6 as it launches into space, looking back down on the Atlantic Ocean and French Guiana below, 90 seconds into flight. Hearing from mission control that propulsion is normal. I can understand that in French. Continuing to push down range, standing by for SRB burnout and jettison.
La trajectoire est nominale.
I'm pretty sure that also means the trajectory is normal.
SRB separation should be at 2 minutes and 21 seconds into flight. So that's just in 21 seconds from now.
Again, the onboard views are a little bit delayed compared to the ground tracking views, so do anticipate that. So if you don't see something happen immediately on the onboard views, don't worry. But that is almost it's a jellyfish. It's basically a jellyfish from Ariane 6 over French Guiana. And there we go, SRB burnout and jettison.
Séparation des ESR.
Almost a replay from on board, of course, the delayed views. A few seconds later. But there you go. Away they go. Those brand new. I mean, that's just an incredible shot.
Yeah. I'm still hoping we get a full ground track from some at some point, because I want to see that Korolev cross, but then the Ariane variety, I
Trajectoire
think.
nominale.
Trajectory continues to be nominal, and I mean, yeah, those brand new SRBs, 3 minutes into flight, and they've well and truly done their job. That was incredible to see, especially the separation motors when they fire and they push against the core stage. It creates such a beautiful plume. And yeah, that was basically an Ariane jellyfish. It was
Yeah.
spectacular.
We should be coming up onto fairing separation, which, according to the clock, should have already happened. But there it goes. Of course,
Just
we're
as you
seeing
say
delay
it.
fuse.
La
Yep,
propulsion
of
est
course.
nominale.
Yeah.
The fairing quite literally waving at you as it falls back to Earth.
I love the floppy fairings. It's just, it looks fun.
Oh dear. Well, maybe we'll see the floppy fairings as well on Terran R, because apparently they also share the Ariane fairings.
Ooh, yeah, you're right.
We'll have to wait and see.
Yeah. So the rocket is now propelled by its main stage, which will continue pushing the rocket for quite a long time. And main stage separation is set for
La propulsion est
launch
nominale.
plus 7 minutes and 51 seconds.
Le pilotage calme.
And it still sounds like everything is nominal. And then 8 seconds after separation, the Vinci-powered upper stage will ignite. And that will also burn for quite a long time. It's not like Falcon 9, which will burn for like 8 or 9 minutes and deliver the payload into low Earth orbit. Like Ariane 6 takes the slow route, but it's a very precise way to insert a payload into orbit. And as we've seen with the launches so far, it works really well.
I mean, these are just some spectacular views from the lower liquid propulsion module of Ariane 6 as it now rises almost 200 kilometers in altitude, traveling 3.5 kilometers per second, 590 kilometers downrange from the launch pad. Just look at that.
La trajectoire reste
Beautiful
nominale.
morning launch. Launched 5 minutes ago, so just after, I believe that's 20 minutes past 9 in the morning local time. So yeah, beautiful morning launch out of Kourou. Over 212 kilometers in altitude now. I do have to say, I did hear the word barbecue on the comms net a few minutes ago, and they are slowly rolling, so I'm going to assume that the barbecue word we all
Il
heard
reste 2 minutes de
was
propulsion Vulcain.
for the thermal management of the vehicle, and not that the launch director was ready for lunch.
So what they're doing there, essentially, when the sun is, the energy from the sun is hitting the rocket, it will start to warm up that side of the rocket. So they roll the rocket around so that it will evenly heat the
Pilotage calme.
rocket and the satellites as well. And that's often called a barbecue roll for obvious reasons, I think.
Very famously done with the Apollo Command Service module.
Et acquisition de la télémesure par la SNA.
And I believe that was another ground station picking up signal from Ariane 6. And you can see there on the animation on the left-hand side, all 36 of those Amazon LEO satellites, of course, exposed to the vacuum of space following fairing separation a few minutes ago.
Il reste 1 minute de
Approaching
propulsion Vulcain.
I believe that was 1 minute until the Vulcan cuts off, which makes sense because we're approaching 7 minutes into flight, and Vulcan, excuse my pronunciation, is expected to cut off 7 minutes and 45 seconds after launch. So in about 45 seconds from now. Good timing. A few seconds later, the LLPM, the lower liquid propulsion module, also known as the core stage, you just want to call it simpler name, that will then separate and fall away. It'll almost look like it's doing a boost back burn. It's definitely not, trust me. This thing is booking it and heading down range. And then we will see the Vinci first ignition at 7 minutes and 59 seconds after launch. So I'm sure we'll see that in real time on the animation. Again, a reminder, the onboard views from Ariane 6, a little bit delayed. So if you see an event not happening at the exact time it's meant to happen, just because of a delayed video, doesn't mean that something's gone wrong.
Absolutely. I just wish they would switch the onboard views and the animation, because I want to see the onboard views up in full resolution.
But there we go. Confirmation of engine
Yeah.
cutoff. Trust me, that core stage does not fall
Yeah.
away that quickly in real life.
And
there
that
we
looks
go.
like very clean separation.
That is the live camera view in the bottom right-hand corner. Again, much slower falling away of the LLPM. But there we go. Ignition of the upper stage and the core stage now falling away. Very much looks like a boost back burn startup.
Yeah, it does. I assume that's just some venting and thrusters firing to get the booster out of the way.
I mean, we've got a jellyfish on the way uphill, almost looking like we're getting a stage separation. Thank you, Arianespace. Almost look like we're getting a stage separation jellyfish as well. That's very pretty.
It is. You can see the nozzle of the Vinci engine light up as it's heating up.
Approaching 9 minutes into flight, of course, Marty. By this point, a Falcon 9, for example, would have already had second engine cutoff, but Ariane 6 takes a bit more of a leisurely approach, a bit more of a lofted approach. You can see there actually the altitude and time graph in the top right box. That is the... you can see the altitude actually dips down from about now, but that's completely expected. That's because the second stage takes a little bit longer, doesn't have the highest thrust to weight ratio.
Indeed. And it's all down to engine performance and efficiency. Like the Merlin is a very powerful engine, so they have to... They can't throttle it down. I need to get my thoughts in order here. They can actually throttle it down quite a lot, but not enough to very slowly make it to orbit, like Ariane 6 does, or Falcon from ULA. But that doesn't mean that any approach is wrong. Like these high performance engines, these very efficient engines that are running on Ariane 6 will also get your payload into orbit. They just need to fire for a much longer time, which is perfectly fine. And there might also be some arguments to make for that. At least I've heard some arguments that if you have a much less powerful engine, that you can deliver it into a much more precise orbit. On the other hand, SpaceX has also said that their orbit insertion precision is more than good enough for most, if not all, payloads. So, yeah, it's just all different ways, different methods to get to the same result. And honestly, I like the look of Ariane 6. It's a beautiful rocket, so I'm not complaining about that at all.
Indeed. 11 minutes into flight now. Still hearing from Mission Control in Kourou that everything is looking nominal. And again, this Vinci first burn is expected to cut off 17 minutes, 51 seconds after launch. So just over 6 minutes left in this burn for this stage. It will have another burn to do about an hour and 8 minutes after launch, which are basically like a secularization burn, you know. And then they will continue on with the payload separations. So again, they are now technically losing altitude over the Earth's surface, now descending through 257 kilometers. Looks like they're now acquiring signal from Santa Maria in Portugal. But as you can see, the speed is continuing to tick up. So they are now over 6.25 kilometers per second. So very quickly approaching orbital velocities here as they fly over the Atlantic Ocean towards Europe. If you see in the map diagram in the bottom right, it looks like they're going to hit the Portuguese or the Spanish coast first, flying over Europe before those deployment events begin. On the kind of the next orbit around, which you can see there. 12 minutes 45 seconds into flight. Approximately 5 minutes left in this burn for the upper stage. You can see there in the animation all 36 of those Amazon LEO satellites, of course, thanks to the upgraded performance of the P160C solid rocket booster flying on today's mission for the first time. They're able to squeeze 4 more satellites onto the Ariane 6. That might not sound like a lot, and over one single launch it isn't, but when you consider that they're going to be launching tens of missions over the next few months as they outfit their entire constellation, basically, after 9 launches of Ariane 6, they'll get another launch for free because they're launching 4 extra satellites per launch. So it's a good deal that Amazon is getting with this upgraded Ariane 6.
For sure. And I've got to say, I like the look of this payload stack. Like the 32 satellite payload stack has always bothered me quite a bit because the top ring of satellites just looks incomplete.
It's also cool to see them all stacked up because, of course, LEO launches across many different types of launch vehicles, so it's cool to see this basically the same payload adapter for all of the stacks of satellites fitting into the different fairings of the different rockets from Ariane 6 to Atlas, and of course Falcon as well. And hopefully Vulcan in the not too distant future, but maybe they need to get their SRBs and their BE4s figured out before they launch again. 14.5 minutes. Go on, Marty.
I was just going to say they've got quite a few things to fix over at ULA, so hopefully they will get that sorted.
14 minutes and 50 seconds into flight, so we're about 3 minutes or so remaining on this burn. Then we should see the Vinci cut off for the end of its initial orbital insertion burn. Again, with this kind of lofted trajectory, it's technically losing altitude, now only 190 kilometers in altitude, but that is expected. They will then do another circularization burn just over an hour into flight to fully circularize the orbit before they begin payload separations an hour and 40 minutes after launch. So still flying over the Atlantic Ocean for now.
Il reste
But
2
we are
minutes de propulsion
rapidly,
ainsi avant la première extinction.
looks like a call out for the minutes to go until cutoff. But yeah, we are still over the Atlantic flying towards continental Europe.
Trajectoire nominale.
Unfortunately, it is daytime, so very little chance you'll actually be able to spot Ariane 6, unfortunately, if you are in Europe. But it definitely was a spectacular sight for those spectators on the ground who didn't watch the launch through their phones.
Yeah, if you're there, then watch the rocket in person. Don't look at your phone.
I can assure you that Arianespace has much better cameras than your phone camera. You can go back and rewatch the launch afterwards, but experience it in person to begin with. About 1 minute and 10 seconds remaining now on this burn from the Vinci on the second stage, also known as the upper liquid propulsion module.
Pilotage calme et fin du mode barbecue.
I wonder if we will get any onboard views returning, but for now it does look like we just have the animation of the current positioning of the vehicle as it flies overhead Santa Maria, which is their current ground tracking station where they are communicating with the rocket from. About 20 seconds left to go in the burn.
Première extinction Vinci. Orbite
That sounded
correcte.
like correct orbit and nominal shutdown of the Fancy engine.
There we go.
So
The
that's what
animation
we'd like
shows
to
it.
hear.
And that concludes the first stage, not the first
Pilotage
stage,
est
the
calme.
first burn of the second stage.
Indeed. It will reignite again in, at T plus 1 hour and 8 minutes to do one more burn before satellite deployment. And then after the satellites are deployed, it will reignite once again for deorbit. And that will be done 2 hours and 40 minutes into flight. So that's one of the new capabilities that the Ariane 6 added compared to the Ariane 5. The upper stage can actually reignite for, these multi-burn deployments, but also for deorbiting the upper stage, which is quite nice to not litter space with spent upper stages.
We like to clean up when we have the opportunity to.
Propulsion nominale,
It's
pilotage
better not
calme.
to litter.
Absolutely. And Europe and ESA have actually made a lot of plans and with all kinds of requirements to keep space clean, and are following them pretty strictly. And Ariane 6 is just another step in these plans. So it's great to see that they're actually doing it.
La propulsion est nominale et acquisition de la télémesure par la station de Haussagel.
Looks like we're picking up another tracking station. Oh, I thought they were going to show it. Never mind. But there you go. You can see there. I can see myself in that animation. I can see my house. Approaching continental Europe itself. Flying on that northeasterly trajectory.
Propulsion nominale. Pilotage calme.
I'm not quite sure how propulsion remains to be nominal when the engine isn't running, but I'll trust the experts that things still continue to look good. But with that, we are 20 minutes into flight, and I don't know about you, but it's going to be a little while until we get the payloads deploying from Ariane 6. So with that, Marty, thank you so much for coming on today's stream. Always fun to talk about Ariane 6 and what Europe's up to.
For sure, and it was great to be here to see Europe's new most powerful rocket debut with these P160C solid rocket boosters.
La propulsion est nominale.
So, great
Fin de
mission, great
visibilité de la
flight.
télémesure par la station de Santa Maria des Açores.
It was a lot of fun to be on stream, to share this with you all. So, thanks.
Yeah, of course. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. It has been great to share this launch with you all, as always, especially at this earlier hour for our friends in the Americas, this afternoon stream for our friends in Europe. Beautiful morning launch of Ariane 6 from Kourou, and another 36 Amazon LEO satellites are now in space, thanks to that brand new P160C upgrade. My name's been Ryan Caton. Thank you so much for tuning in, and we will see you guys next time.
And here we go.
There's the deluge. Here's ignition.
Following up.
Did it just do a Kerbal?
Back to the moon and beyond.
Put that in the big bag, Gino.
Back at home, we all have a lot of work to do, but from here, that sure looks like a perfect flow.
Propulsion continues to be normal.
We did have an observation. 343 unfolds to go.
It's orange.
Water towers fly!
Bingo! Right in the center.
Where's Jacqueline? There it is!
That was surreal.
That's not what we want to see.
No!
Oh my god.
Yikes. You bet. We don't need any more of these.